Hi guys, it's Chef Nick. Thanks for supporting Fat Sparrow Meal Kits. Today we're cooking maple whiskey glazed meatloaf. This one's awesome. We've got our onions and parsley, we've got some more instructions, our ground pork, seasonings and oils, some beautiful local apples, potatoes from Stavanis Family Farms, cheese curds, pumpkin seeds, cream and barbecue sauce, lemon, carrots, eggs and butter. Let's get cooking. All right, it's time to start cooking our whiskey maple glazed meatloaf. This is one of my favorites because usually I listen to Meatloaf bat out of hell the entire time. We're not gonna do that today because you need to hear me. So we've got our pork in a pan. I'm gonna finely chop some white onion. We have our beautiful seasoning mix here. I can't tell you everything that's in it, but I do know it's delicious. I'm gonna sprinkle it all in there. We've got some salt going in the pan. We've got 1 egg. And then I'm just gonna chop my onion. And finally, our diced onion. I've got all my ingredients in there. I gave it a really good mixing. It takes a couple minutes to incorporate all that egg, and we really wanna sort of smear the fat of the pork around. So don't be shy when you're mixing it. It's gonna help us make sure we have a really nice firm textured meatloaf later. So be aggressive, get in there. I'm using the back of a spoon, and I'm just rotating it and kind of folding the meat over and then smashing it down with the back of my spoon. So now that that's done, we're gonna cook the meatloaf. So find any kind of pan you want. You could have a traditional loaf pan. I don't have one of those, so I'm just gonna use my cast iron pan. I would use cast iron for almost everything if I could. So into the pan it goes. Then I'm just gonna take a minute to kind of really smush it in there. And there's probably no better word to describe it than smush. So that's now a technical term. We don't want to have any air bubbles because later it's just going to be an air bubble inside the meatloaf. So do make sure you've kind of packed it in and eliminated any of those pockets of air that might be trapped in there. Into the oven it goes. We're preheated at 375, set the timer for 30 minutes. Okay, next we're going to get our mashed potatoes going. It's pretty simple to make mashed potatoes. We do have a couple of tricks along the way, but one of them is not cutting and boiling your potatoes. So we, for this recipe, are leaving it rustic. We're not gonna peel the potatoes. If you wanna peel them at home, by all means do. But one thing we are gonna do is make sure we cut off any really nasty parts, and we've given these a good wash already. We're just gonna cut these into sort of 1/2-inch sized pieces. Really doesn't matter which size you wanna cut them to, but do keep them relatively even so that they cook evenly. And into the pot they go. Now, I'm gonna give these a bit of a rinse in water. We wanna give them a couple of washes just to get all the starches off, and then I'll set them to boil. We wanna use cold water and a little bit of salt. Okay, so potatoes are diced, they've been rinsed a few times. The heat is on high, the water is cold. We're gonna sprinkle a little bit of our salt in there, and then we'll put a lid on it, and we'll check those in about 10 to 15 minutes. Next thing we're gonna do is prepare our salad. So I'm gonna peel some carrots, grate some apples. We'll get that started. So, time to get our salad going. We got our potatoes working, our meatloaf's cooking away. The salad's super simple, super easy, but we might as well fill the time. So, we begin by peeling the carrots. If you don't want to peel your carrots, you don't have to, but give them a really good wash if you don't. They do come out of the ground, so they do carry a lot of dirt with them. I like to peel mine, and I'll just save it for stock or feed them to the dog. So, the next step in our salad is to simply grate the carrots. You could chop these if you wanted, you could get fancy and try and julienne them, or you can use a grater. Box graters are great for shredding up stuff like this. Just watch your knuckles. So I've got the largest holes available. I've peeled and trimmed the bottom off my carrot, and then I'm just gonna grate them. Easy peasy. The first time we made this recipe at home, my youngest daughter made it. She did an awesome job. This was actually the only part I had to help with. And then we're gonna take one of our apples and we're gonna do the same thing and grate it. We're gonna save the other one of those apples and slice it up nicely just so the salad has a little bit of a textural look to it, a bit of a good garnish. When you're grating the apple, it's as simple as grating the whole thing. And when you get down to the core, just give it a turn. And then you just make your way through the whole thing. So we've got our grated apple and carrot. I'm gonna squeeze a little bit of fresh lemon juice on it, just to keep that apple from browning on us. And then we'll mix that about and we'll set it aside. Okay, so the timer went off on the meatloaf. It's been a half an hour. It's pretty much fully cooked. It's time to glaze it and get it back in the oven to brown it off. We've got our lovely barbecue sauce here. This is our famous sweet barbecue sauce that we make at the Stone Crock, and we've added a little maple syrup and a little bit of whiskey, so it's even sweeter, which is gonna really nicely brown up on this meatloaf. So put as much or as little as you like. I'm gonna put a pretty good amount, but I'm also gonna save some back just in case the kids want it on their plates. So that's glazed. That's gonna go back in the oven for about 10 more minutes just to brown it off. Now we're on to our potatoes. These guys have been simmering away for about 15 minutes. The best way to check them is just to poke a knife into them. If the knife goes through, they're pretty much cooked. If the knife goes through but sticks in, they might need a few more minutes, but these are all feeling pretty done. So I'm gonna drain these off over here. I'll be right back. Okay, so those are drained, but chef's tip, leave these for 2 or 3 minutes just to steam off. We wanna get rid of that extra moisture because we're gonna replace it with butter and cream. Butter and cream is way tastier than salted water. So let that steam for a second. In the meantime, I'm gonna shred up some parsley for our garnish. I'm gonna do a fancy cut called a chiffonade. This just means little ribbons. So the best thing to do is kind of pinch your parsley, roll it into a little bundle or a little doobie, and then we're gonna give it a slice. Okay, time to mash our potatoes. So we've got our potatoes, they've had a few minutes to steam off, but they're still piping hot. We've got our nicely warmed cream and butter, and we're just gonna start to mash. And I'll do a few mashes and then I'll add my cream. One thing we wanna remember that if you overwork your potatoes when you're mashing them, they do tend to get a little bit gluey. So don't spend too much time mashing them about. I personally would rather have a couple of lumps in my potatoes than mashed potatoes that feel too gluey or too tight. I like my potatoes really loose with lots of cream and butter, so I'm gonna add all of this. If you didn't, you could reserve some of this back. If you have extra in your fridge, it makes an excellent garnish for a soup or something like that, just to put a little bit of richness in it. So my potatoes are nice and mashed. They're not too lumpy, but they're also not overworked. So I'm pretty happy with that. The next step is gonna be to add a little dash of cider vinegar. Cider vinegar is a really nice addition to mashed potatoes. It really makes all the flavors pop, lightens the dish a little bit. So I'm gonna put in about a tablespoon. And then the best part of this dish is the cheese curds. So we have these beautiful, lovely, squeaky cheese curds. In they go to the mashed potatoes. And we're just gonna mix them about. And this is gonna give us, you wanna do this right at the last minute, because then the cheese curds will have all of that sort of ooey gooey elasticity, and they'll just be amazing. And we just wanna check this for seasoning. And then a little bit of salt. You'd be surprised how much salt it takes to make mashed potatoes really, really delicious. And that's one of the differences between cooking at home and cooking at a restaurant, is that we're not afraid to get aggressive with our salt. So if you want these to taste like restaurant mashed potatoes, taste them, reseason them, taste them, reseason them. All right, so our meatloaf is lovely and browned. You can see the barbecue sauce has gotten glazed. It smells delicious. Our potatoes are ready, our salad's ready. So it's time to go to the plate. So I'm gonna cut this meatloaf into fun little wedges. So it's time to build our plate. So some of our lovely cheese curd mashed potatoes, which, as promised, that is amazing. If you cannot break the cheese curds, then you've done the right recipe. I'm gonna put a little more because I love potatoes. Oh, I think I'll do my salad next. Put a little bit of salad on there to balance it all out. The nice acidity, the crunchy bits. Nice little wedge of meatloaf. And then since I held back a little bit of that barbecue sauce, we can put some on the plate for garnish. And finally, for the chef's touch, a little bit of that chiffonade parsley. That is beautiful. Well guys, thanks a lot for cooking meatloaf with me. Thank you for supporting Fat Sparrow Group, and thank you from all of us, and especially Chef Nick, for choosing to buy Fat Sparrow meal kits. Have a great night, enjoy dinner.